Hello, my name is Mark. I'm a design engineer here at Company23. And today we are going to be completely disassembling, cleaning, and reassembling an exhaust AVCS cam gear. Now, if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, there's no way to fully disassemble that. Well, now there is. Company23 has released an entire new category of AVCS cam gear rebuild tools that not only allow you to completely disassemble, properly reassemble your exhaust cam gear, but also your intake cam gear. So if you want to see how to rebuild an intake cam gear, check out the link in the description down below. Okay, anyway, so if your exhaust cam gears look like one of these, shout out Smedia. This is actually off one of his customer cars. It's got a ton of metal paste in it. When you spin a bearing, you have an engine failure, metal goes through anything that oil touches, right? So even if your cam gear looks like this, we can still clean it, we can still rebuild it, we can still reuse it. There's nothing wrong with this cam gear. Everyone throws them away, replaces them. There's nothing physically wrong with it other than what's the goop in it. So if we can get that goop out of there, we can reuse our cam gears. So let's do one. We're gonna go through step by step how to rebuild this cam gear. So first thing we're gonna need to do is grab our AVCS work stand. One thing to note, to rebuild the exhaust cam gears, you will need to buy both the intake cam gear tools as well as the exhaust cam gear tools. And Company23 is also proud to introduce AVCS seals. This is the internal seal to the gear that has been tested and durability tested and all that fun stuff. So the first thing we're gonna do is grab our work stand. I highly recommend a bench mount vise. In addition to a bench mount vise, you will also need flathead screwdriver, a Company23 AVCS socket, a 6mm Allen socket, 19mm hex socket, a couple wrenches, torque wrench, assembly lube, brake cleaner, paper towels, all that good stuff, everything on this table. So I'm gonna grab my work stand, head over to my vise, let's get started. So we're over here at a bench vise. We also have our Company23 AVCS work stand. It's designed to use in a vise. Are there other ways you can do this? Maybe. I highly recommend the use of a bench vise, and I'll show you why you're gonna need this to reassemble the gear as well. So the first thing we're gonna do is actually on the bench. So the exhaust AVCS gears have this torsion helper spring. So to remove that, all I'm gonna do is take a medium-sized flat blade screwdriver. You wanna make sure you don't have your hand anywhere over here because there's a lot of force in there. I'm gonna put it in the end of this. I'm gonna turn 90 degrees. And I'm gonna hold my screwdriver down. That'll actually capture the spring when it releases. So the steps on this are very critical. So make sure you follow along with the procedure that we're showing. So the next thing we're gonna do is crack these bolts loose. Now, we're not gonna remove them. We're just gonna crack them loose so they're finger tight. So I'm gonna grab my wrench, my Company23 AVCS socket. I'm gonna hold the gear with one hand, loosen the bolts with the other. It's also very critical that you go crisscross applesauce with these. I like to start with the big ones and get them loose, and also do the little ones, as there are two different sizes. So I use my extension kind of as a nut driver. Now you'll see all these are finger tight. We're not gonna back them off. We're not gonna do anything else with the gear yet. The next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna come back over here to the table. And now we are going to pull this bucket off of the cam gear. So this bucket is actually a press fit into that center rotor. We need to pull that off the rotor before we can disassemble the gear the rest of the way. So one thing I like to do is take a paper towel, a little bit of brake clean, and make sure that the outer diameter of this bucket is clean of any oil, contaminants, things that might make it slipperier than it needs to be. Because we are gonna clamp on the outside of this bucket to pull it free. So now, gonna take our Company23 bucket puller, take this nut and washer off. And now this should slip over the bucket, firmly seat. So that's all the way down. Now I'm going to tighten these two Allen bolts. these do need to be somewhat tight, since what we are doing is clamping on that bucket, and we're gonna use our bucket cup to pull that off. Snug them down, kind of even Steven back and forth. I'm gonna walk it back and forth, side to side. Make sure we have a decent amount of clamp load on this gear. Make sure they're both snug, tight. They need to be tight. All right, that's tight on the gear. Now I can take our Company 23 puller cup, put it over the tool. There is a notch on this that clears the spring pin down there. So make sure you line that up. Fully seat it on the gear, washer, nut. Now we're gonna tighten that nut with a 19mm socket. Hold the gear with the other hand. You should be able to pull that bucket right off. There's our bucket. Now we can back this nut off. Move this. There you go. Now, these are really tight, and that bucket obviously is still in there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come back over to our vise. We're gonna remove our AVCS work stand. This is a steel puller. So, down here we have some flats. We can put that in our vise, clamp it very gently, and now we can remove those two clamp bolts and be smarter than the tool. So there's one. Flip it around. Clamp it gently. There's two. So now, should be able to remove these bolts. Just actually, I don't need to remove them all the way. I can just unsnug them. There's our bucket. It has been pulled off the gear, undamaged. Can reuse that, no problem. Now, since we already loosened the bolts on the back side of the gear, they're finger tight, and we can just run these out. We'll set these aside as we go. Now, if you've already watched our intake cam rebuild video, you'll know that the guts of this thing are basically the same as your intake cam. So it's very critical. If you're doing multiple of these, I highly recommend one at a time so you don't mess up any parts. Everything kind of goes back with the gear. It should. So now I'm actually gonna grab another paper towel for the parts. So I can remove our gear, our pulley. And then if you ever get these stuck on, there are a few pry points on the gears. So if you see right here, there's 3 of them on their way around the tool, or on the way around the gear. You can stick a flat blade screwdriver in there very, very gently, not too far. You can just get it cracked free and open it up. So another thing to note, this gear was one of our development gears, so it's clean, but on the screen here, Harris is gonna throw up what an average gear looks like when you get it taken apart. Dirty, metal filled, yucky. And then the next picture is what it needs to look like when you're done cleaning it. So that's what we're gonna do now. So now, we're gonna finish disassembling the gear. We're gonna remove the rotor. So when we remove the rotor, there should be 6 white plastic rotor seals, as well as 6 little springs that go with them. So what I wanna do is flip it over and push it out over a clean paper towel. Make sure everything falls down. Don't go crazy with this because we never wanna lose anything. Then we're just gonna kinda line everything up and make sure we have it all. 4, 5, 6. and then the springs. So now the next thing you want to do is inspect everything. So we want to make sure we inspect the housing. Obviously this one is very clean. They will not look like this when you take them apart. Same with the rotor. And you want to make sure you clean this to an inch of your life so that when we put this back together, there's no debris, foreign contamination, anything like that going through your brand new engine. Now that we have the gear completely disassembled, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the alignment pin. So on the rotor, there's this very small pin. And what that does is this bucket is aligned to the rotor based off that pin. This bucket is a press fit into the rotor. So on very isolated incidents, if you hold the outside of the cam gear, this bucket's press fit can give way and this bucket will spin slightly and shear this pin off. Now, if that happens, you get an inappropriate amount of preload on this torsion spring. What that means is that you may end up with a DTC or a check engine light in your car when you get everything back together. If when you disassemble your exhaust AVCS cam gear, you get to this part and you have a broken alignment pin on the rotor, don't fret. We have a kit to fix that as well. So this alignment pin is what aligns the bucket, as I talked about previously. We're actually gonna fix this at home. So the first thing we're gonna do, since this pin is actually still kind of hanging on there, and take a pair of pliers, and we're just gonna pull out the remnants of that pin, set that aside, we're not gonna need any more. The first thing we're gonna do is you can actually see some of the aluminum has been pushed up. So what we need to do is smooth that out so that doesn't contact the bottom of our bucket anymore. Then we're actually gonna drill a hole, push in a new pin. And then we'll be using our Company23 exhaust AVCS pin fix kit, and that comes with a couple things. We have a drill guide that goes on the gear with a pressed-in steel drill guide. We include the correct size drill bit, a drill stop, a pin punch, and then we have pins for sale as well. Another fun feature, if you're wondering where to put this drill stop, we actually built in a guide into the drill guide. So you can just hold your drill bit in there, slide your drill guide up, tighten the Allens. That is the correct depth to drill your cam gear, right like that. Good to go. But the first thing we're gonna do is take our Dremel. Now, when I do this, I'm gonna be extremely careful to stay in that isolated area. I just wanna bring the high spots down to meet that surface. So that's too much. But now, just gonna basically go in here like a surgeon, ever so carefully. So now that we've done that, we've knocked down any and all high spots, and I've removed as little material as possible. So I can run my finger over this and nothing is higher than this top plane. All right. So now we can take our drill guide. This self-aligns on the lock pin so that there is no guessing on the placement, there's no guessing on the depth, nothing. So I take my drill bit, which is the correct size drill bit, lock it into my drill. I'm just gonna drill, I'm gonna tap drill it. And of course, as you go, it's never a bad idea. Check your work, clean out the chips. That looks great so far. It's also not a bad idea. I'm a fan of checking things, especially when you're doing permanent work to them. What you can do, take your drill bit and just double check your depth. Make sure it's good. And in this case, it's still perfect. So, get back to work. A little bit more to go. You want to make sure that the face of this drill stop touches the drill guide. Make sure it doesn't get plugged up with chips. Less is more when it comes to this, so you want to make sure that you're doing a quality job. All right. There we go. We have hit the stop. We can check our work. Make sure we got all the chips out of there, which we do. Set our drill aside. Now, these pins are obviously very small. Actually, I'm gonna clean up my workspace a little bit. Please hold. So these pins are obviously very small and they're kind of hard to tap in there. So what we did was we actually developed a punch specifically for this pin. Now, the other thing to note is that this top surface of the pin, you wanna make sure that is below the surface where the bucket resides. So if I'm looking at this pin, this edge right here needs to be slightly below that surface that the bucket rides on. So another thing that we wanna do when we drive this pin in is we don't wanna do it on the tabletop, because if you tap this and you mushroom this back edge at all, that can make this not go onto the camshaft. So what we're gonna do is actually do this on our alignment tool. So I'm gonna put that alignment tool in my vise. And again, anytime you use this, you wanna make sure there's a little bit of lube on there. We can get our rotor, our pin, and our punch. We can put the rotor on the alignment tool. Should go right on. And by doing it on the alignment tool, that will ensure that you haven't mushroomed the back of the rotor. And that's good to go back in your car. Now we can tap it in. All right, looks pretty good. One more for good luck. All right. As you can see, that top surface of the pin is very slightly below this surface here, and that ensures that the bucket is seated all the way down onto the rotor. Your locating pin has been fixed, and you can now proceed on to the rest of your AVCS gear reassembly. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through, we're gonna clean all these parts and make sure that we are good to reassemble them. So cleaning the parts, I recommend a parts washer, a soft brush in the parts washer, brake cleaner, compressed air. Make sure that they look like this before you put them back together. They need to be very clean. It's engine internals we're talking about. So these have already been cleaned. Now we are gonna go through reassembling an exhaust AVCS cam gear the proper way. So what we're gonna do is we're going to need our assembly lube. I recommend Royal Purple. It's pretty thin, but it's also sticky. It seems to help the cam gear go together really nice. We're also gonna need our Company 23 cam gear alignment tool. If you're not using this tool, make sure you leave it in the red netting. It's a protective thing to make sure you don't damage it. Don't drop this, scratch it. It's a precision tool rather, to align the rotor to the housing. So basically what happens is this rotor, there is some play in there, right? So if this rotor isn't perfectly concentric to the rear housing, this guy, if these aren't perfectly concentric, this diameter and this diameter, it'll bind when it goes on your camshaft, and then sometimes they get stuck. And if they get stuck, you'll also get a check engine light for a cam code. But it's okay, we're gonna tackle this when we put it back together and make sure everything is aligned perfectly. So the first thing we're gonna do, take some assembly lube, and we're just gonna put some here in the housing. Now you wanna be pretty liberal with this because these are engine surfaces, right? Stuff is going up against each other. We wanna make sure everything is nice and lubed. So on first startup, we don't get any metal on metal contact. Same thing with the rotor. We're just gonna put some around the outside and both on the front face We'll deal with the rear face in a little bit. So got that all worked around the rotor. Should be good to go. When I put this in the cam gear, I'm going to make sure that I do it in an unlocked position. So this, here to lock, push it up, move it back, unlocked. That'll give me a little bit more play when we go to press the front bucket on. So now we got that in there. The exhaust cam gears are a little bit more intricate to reassemble. We're actually gonna basically like halfway reassemble it. Then we need to press this gear back onto it. I'll show you how to do that. And then we'll finish assembling it. So it's kind of a multi-stage process. So let's do that now. So unlike the intake cam gear, where we actually reassemble it on the work stand, we're not gonna do that with the exhaust cam. We're gonna do it on the table. So same thing as the intake cam gear. I'm gonna take a spring and take a rotor seal, plop the spring into the rotor seal so that it looks like that. Now, I'm gonna take that, unlock my gear again. I'm gonna take this little assembly and insert it into one of the 6 locations. Now, the plastic white part always goes on to the surface that's getting scraped. So what I mean by that, this rotor moves back and forth. You can see this internal square part is stationary in relation to the rotor. This outer surface is what's getting scraped. So the white part goes towards the outside. I just drop it in, make sure my rotor stays in there. And I can do that 5 more times. I can put my spring on. I like to kind of go back and forth around the rotor. Kind of keeps it in there. Keeps the lock pin from pushing it out of the housing. All right, now that we got all the springs and scrapers in the rotor, I'm gonna coat the back side of the rotor and the housing with some assembly lube. Make sure it's spread all around. I'm not gonna put my seal in the cam gear yet. So basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this together, put it in the vise, press that bucket back in. I don't want to clamp down on my O-ring, take it back apart, clamp it again. So I'm actually gonna put this on without the O-ring. And I'm gonna take all my bolts, get them started. I'm just gonna run them down so they're almost touching that face, but they're still very loose and not snug at all. Also, don't use an impact for this, okay? These gears are not fragile, but they're delicate. Using an impact, bad things probably happen. Just take the extra couple minutes and do it by hand. All right, so before I go much further, this is one thing to show you. So you see how this back cover can move a little bit? We need to make sure that the rotor and the rear housing are concentric with each other. So what we need to do for that is grab our Company 23 cam gear alignment tool, put some assembly lube on that so everything can kind of naturally find its home. Drop this in very carefully. Don't force this, okay? If you force things, bad things happen. So now, this can move freely. Everything is concentric with each other. Now, we can snug these bolts down. Again, they do not need to be tight for this step. So we're just gonna run these bolts down until they're snug. All right, so our bolts are all snug. We have assembly lube everywhere, which is not always a bad thing. And our tool spins very freely and is seated all the way in here. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna use our vise, our alignment tool, and our work stand to press this bucket back onto the gear. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna see this pin down in there. There's a corresponding hole in the bucket. I can actually drop this bucket in and make sure it's aligned to that pin before any of the press starts engaging. You see that pin, that hole, it's all lined up. Now I'm gonna take my assembly, come over to the vise. I'm actually gonna use this as a press. So, I'm gonna make sure my alignment tool and my work stand are all lined up. And now, I'm gonna use this to press this bucket back on. And it doesn't take much, so that's already on there. And I can see, after doing that, that pin is now slightly less than flush with the bottom surface of that bucket. Now, what you may notice, your alignment tool is now stuck. That's okay. So the reason that we did this without the gear is that because when you press that bucket on, you naturally create small amount of misalignment. Any misalignment with this alignment tool that's bound down like this means the cam gear is out of alignment. That's okay. So what we're gonna do, take these bolts out, put the seal in, put the gear on, put the bolts back on. Bob's your uncle. You have a good cam gear. So what we're gonna do is crack all these bolts loose again. And when we get these loose, you'll notice your alignment tool is now free to move. So now I got all these loose. Our alignment tool, free and clear, I can pull it out. Now the other thing you can do, now that you have that front bucket on, you can run your vise back together. You can go back to working off your work stand. All right, work stand's back in there. We can take our gear, and the same work stand works, all your intake, all your exhaust cam gears. So now we're gonna take these bolts fully back out. Now that we got all our bolts out, we can remove this rear cover again. And now we're actually gonna install our brand new Company23 AVCS seal. And this only goes one way because we have that little ledge there. So that goes in there. And then while we have this apart, again, we're gonna put a little more assembly lube on there because you can never have enough lube. Get a little more on the back cover. Okay. And we are just gonna set this on to the gear for now. Make sure seal doesn't go anywhere. Grab our alignment tool again. Put a little more assembly lube on there. Again, you can never have enough lube. Get this started in the back of the cam gear. Run it all the way down. Make sure it turns with a little bit of resistance. That again is from the assembly lube. Now, we have that on there. It's all the way down. We can grab our cam gear. So this was an internal rotor for the cam gear. We can drop this on. This only goes one way. Make sure your pin lines up. And we can get the fastener started again. Anyway, all right. Got our alignment tool in. Mild resistance from the cam gear. The cam gear itself is not locked, so I can move it back and forth. This moves, everything's hunky-dory. Now we're gonna run our bolts down just before they touch the gear surface. This is exactly the same as we did with the intake cam gear. We don't want to tighten anything yet. We want to do it methodically, crisscross applesauce, all that fun stuff. So now, we're gonna run them all down just to where they touch off on the back of the gear. I'll do this. I like to start with the big ones. They get more torque, obviously, until I can't tighten them anymore with my fingers. Then I'm going to grab my ratchet. Really small bites with this, okay? You don't need to torque one all the way down before you do anything else. Really small bites, and the reason for that is the fit on this is so precise. We want to bring this cover down, bring the assemblies together parallel. So the other check you can do as you do this is make sure this alignment tool spins, okay? It should have some resistance because you're fighting the stiction of the assembly lube. It should spin. If this binds at all, stop, loosen the bolts, start over. It's okay, you haven't heard anything. So we're just gonna keep running these big bolts down, bite by bite, crisscrossed applesauce. And every time I do a couple bolts, I check my alignment tool. All right, they have started seating, which means we have squashed the O-ring, which is good. All right, So the big ones are tight. Now we can do the same thing with the little ones. So we can run these down with the fingers first. And don't worry, we'll torque these. Everyone knows I love to torque stuff. Again, crisscross applesauce on the little ones. Alignment tool still spins, nice. Okay, now I'm gonna grab my small torque wrench. The bigger bolts with the flange head get 180 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. The smaller ones get 45 inch-pounds. So we're just gonna go ahead, get these. I'm also gonna, for the point of a little easier to torque them, I'm gonna let this gear lock, which it just did. So my alignment tool still spins, so we're good. So holding the gear, I'm gonna torque these down slowly. Again, we're not taking big bites. Do this in a couple rounds. Alignment tool spins nice and free. And one for good luck. All right, alignment tool still spins nice, great. Now, I can back this up to 45 inch-pounds for my small ones. So the small ones, 45 inch-pounds is not a lot, so don't go crazy with these. And we're done. It's not a lot. Okay, now, we can take this off. Our alignment tool still spins nicely. So now, you can pull this out. You might need a paper towel to pull it out just because there's a lot of lube on this. I mean, I can do it with my glove. This alignment tool spins really nice. It goes all the way in. I can pull it out really nicely. So now, we can just set our alignment tool aside for now. Again, keep it stored in the protective sheathing. The last thing we need to do is reinstall the helper spring with basically my favorite tool. So the helper spring goes on here like this. The tang that comes out of the spring goes behind the pin. So I'm gonna put this in here. Make sure that the internal one is seated side of the bucket, and this one is seated on the tang, right? Or the tang is seated on the pin. Now, we're going to take our Company 23 spring installer, which yes, it looks like a wrench, and yes, there is a 1/4 inch drive under the handle. I heard you. So we're gonna put this back on. Now, this pin goes where the cam gear bolt does. This goes behind the spring tang. I'm gonna run it over here. You should actually hear the spring click into the gear. I'm actually gonna hold this spring down on the other side. Now, you can also use a flat blade screwdriver to help get this kind of worked up out of there. And then I always like to give the spring a little push to make sure it's fully seated. You can see this tang is now fully seated into the bucket. This tang is seated on that pin. One more for good luck. That is fully seated. So now, this cam gear is fully ready to install into your engine. Now, it's always nice to double check your work on a bench before you put it on an engine, find a problem. I would rather find a problem here on the bench than have timing covers on, timing belts, go to start the engine, and there's a problem. So I'm gonna show you a couple checks that you can do with this cam gear before you install it to make sure that it's good. So I'm gonna put this back on the work stand. So to verify the performance of the cam gear, I have it here on our work stand on the bench. And then if you look in here, if I blow air into this hole, so this one is the actual alignment pin hole for the camshaft. This hole, if I blow air in there, the gear should actually actuate. So when it does that, I might need to give it a little bit of help with my hand just because we already put that torsions helper spring on there to overcome that, not a big deal. I have a blowgun here with a long metal tip. If you're wondering what model this is, we'll have it in our instructions. I'm just gonna blow a little bit of air in there. You should feel the gear actually is already unlatched. And I can turn it, and it'll actually retract all on its own. So I unlocked it, rotates freely, comes back. good to go. Another check you can do before you install this finished cam gear onto your engine is check it on your actual camshaft. So this gear should slide onto the camshaft with literally zero force. It should fall on. So I have a junk EJ257 here that we do a lot of development with. So this camshaft and this cam gear should go together literally with no force. It falls on like nothing. So if you have to push this on or force it to align on the pin, something's wrong. Start over. This goes on so easy. It literally just falls on. So that's what it should be like. All right, and with that, that concludes our how-to video of how to rebuild an exhaust AVCS cam gear for your dual AVCS Subaru. This one is a little bit more involved in the intake cam gear. It's not difficult, especially if you have the correct tooling. If you're watching this video, these tools are all available at company23.com. If you have any questions, you can always shoot us an email by filling out the web contact form on our website, or hit us up on any of the socials. Myself, Mark, or Harris, our media extraordinaire. We're always answering people's questions, comments, concerns. If you need any help, what tools do I need for my car? We're more than happy to do what we can to get your car back on the road and getting you having some more Subaru related fun. So with that being said, thank you for watching. We appreciate your business. I love you. I really, really, really love you.
Bye.